My guest today is someone who just doesn't have experience of the finance ministry but has also been the former Minister of External Affairs. As Kashmir burns and as India grapples with the Naxal problems and as bank NPAs refuse to budge or die down, which way is the Indian economy and Indian politics veering towards? Who better than Yashwant Sinha to decode that for us? Thanks a lot for joining us on the show, sir. Your voice just doesn't matter on economy, but it also matters on matters of national security. What we're seeing in the valley is perhaps unprecedented. A 2% voter turnout, the valley almost alienated, students taking to streets, and then there seems to be this disconnect that there is between the rest of India and what's happening in Kashmir. Who would you blame for perhaps the worst situation that the valley has seen? And may I begin by asking you, is this the worst that we've seen in the last 2 decades?
It is very bad, but people with experience tell me that the situation in the early 90s was perhaps a shade worse. I don't know, but my own feeling is that there is no point in comparing two sets of situations.
Right.
The present situation is extremely bad, and I don't want to indulge in a blame game for the simple reason that it's a 70-year-old problem, and when we indulge in a blame game, then how far back do we go to? But I will say this in reply to your question, that I find that in the rest of the country there is a mood of denial. We are all seized by that mood that okay, the problem is not as bad as we consider it to be, and ultimately we'll get over it. And where is the Kashmir problem? There is no Jammu and Kashmir problem.
Right.
So there is and this is something which hurts the people most there in the valley.
So what has worsened the situation? We don't want to go 70 years back and understand what the blame game is and do the blame game, but what has worsened the situation in the valley? Do you believe the trigger point was this alliance?
No. The trigger point was the killing of Burhan Wani last year.
Yes.
And whether we like it or not, people say he had a certain kind of appeal among the youth. And that is when the youth came out last year in July, and the pelting of stone incidents increased manifold, and the valley was shut down for almost 4.5 months.
That's right.
There was a people's curfew which was imposed. Trade and industry came to a stop, tourism came to a stop, and things came to a standstill, everything. So that situation improved a little bit in the winter, maybe because of the winter.
Weather, yes.
But now, the situation, I would say, is so fragile that any little incident can trigger a massive unrest.
No, the reason I asked you that question on the alliance was that a lot of people who are Kashmir watchers, quote unquote, to say, they believe it was an unlikely alliance. It was the meeting of partners who were very different in their ideology, and perhaps which is why is this alliance to be blamed for it? I mean, you've been on court to say the non-implementation of the agenda, whether it's Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat or Jamhuriyat, to be blamed, but would you go back and apportion some part of the blame to stitching of this alliance together?
It was a very difficult alliance to form. There is no doubt about it.
Right.
Because ideologically we were not on the same plane as the PDP. But let's look at the verdict. The verdict would show that PDP emerged victorious in the valley, BJP emerged overwhelmingly victorious in Jammu, and suppose this alliance had not been formed, then what would have been the result? The result would have been either continuation of governor's rule, or it would have meant another election. Now, no other kind of government could have been formed as a result of this split verdict, because you can't leave a whole region out. This combination of BJP, PDP has to be also looked upon as a combination or coming together of Jammu and the
Kashmir.
valley and the Dak. And therefore, there is some justification for it, given the people's verdict. You know, so therefore, I am not pinning the blame on the formation of the government. Of course, it was a difficult alliance. It was not a natural alliance, but there it is. That was the verdict.
But are we paying a price for what was not a natural alliance?
I don't think so, because if this was the reason, then why did things happen in early 90s? Why did things go wrong in 2008, in 2010? You know.
So I know you don't want to get into the blame game, but how much of the blame would you apportion on the state government vis-a-vis the centre on this matter? Because Kashmir is very fragile, and we will not deny it on this show.
Okay, I will say this, that you know, when we went to Kashmir on 2 occasions and met a very large number of people. I mean, just imagine, we are meeting with economic interests.
That's right, yes.
And I said jokingly when I met the Chamber of Commerce that this is the first time that I am meeting a Chamber of Commerce where economics was not the issue, politics was the issue.
Yeah.
Why? Because even those who are concerned with economic interests, their own existence is dependent on it.
Yes.
They were saying, please solve the political problem. The political problem has continued for 70 years. You know, 3-4 generations have gone by and the political problem has not been resolved. So they are saying, forget about economics, forget about everything else, please solve the political problem of Jammu and Kashmir. That is their demand. And therefore, to come back to your question, who can take the initiative to solve the political problem? The government of India.
Are they taking enough initiative?
Unfortunately, not at this point of time.
And what do you think is stopping them?
I don't know what is stopping them. I can't answer that question. But we gave our first report in October 2016, in which we strongly pleaded for the beginning of a dialogue process, as promised in the agenda of alliance. We again repeated it in December of last year. We have issued statements from time to time in which we have pleaded with the government to start the dialogue process. The latest I find is after Mehbooba's meeting with the Prime Minister, she came out and said, you can't have a dialogue when stones are flying and that. So situation must return to normal. My take on that is that in order to make the situation normal, you need to start a dialogue process.
And you believe that dialogue has to involve the separatists as well?
You have promised this. You have said in the agenda for alliance that we will talk to all stakeholders like Vajpayee did, including the Hurriyat. So that's a promise that has been made.
Is that what the central government is shying away from?
I don't know why they should shy away from it, because they should have realized what they were writing when the document was released to the world, the agenda for alliance, and the promises made there. All that we are saying is, and a lot of people like me are saying is, please recall the promises that you have made and start acting upon them.
Are you disappointed that you've submitted 2 reports, October, then another one in December? You've sought time with the Prime Minister for a meeting to carry on this dialogue. You still haven't got the time. Are you disappointed with the approach to this entire matter?
I am. I must confess that I am disappointed, because the least that I expected. You know, Kashmir, if you look at 70-year-long history, you will find it's a tale of missed golden opportunities for dialogue and for resolution of the issues. I personally feel that we had another golden opportunity in the winter which had just gone by, where there was a semblance of peace. That was the best time in recent months to start the dialogue process. We have missed that. So what is the kind of calm we expect in the valley to begin the dialogue process? I don't know. But I must confess to you that I am disappointed that we are depending on the security forces to solve what is essentially a political problem.
Are you, disappointment set aside, are you also disturbed that each time a discourse about a dialogue comes up in Kashmir, and which involves the separatists, which involves the Hurriyat, these anti-national lobby comes out as well? If you're going to talk about separatists in Kashmir, you've got to be an anti-national. Does that disturb you?
It disturbs me. The narrative which is being dished out, especially on the television channels,
That's right.
is extremely disturbing, and it's even more disturbing to our Kashmiri friends, you know. And if we are doling out certificates of nationalism and patriotism, then I'll say the greatest anti-national was Vajpayee,
Because
he started a dialogue with the Hurriyat. Advani, who carried forward the talks. These were the most anti-national people.
What would you attribute this handing out of certificates to?
It's the worst thing that can happen to any country.
But why is it happening?
I don't know. I mean, I must confess to you that...
Will you agree with me? Is it a reflection of the majoritarianism view that the country seems to be building around Kashmir? You put out one tweet on social media on the valley and look at how you're trolled. You're almost attacked. I mean,
I know.
names.
I have suffered the trolls myself,
yes,
for saying what I have been saying. But, you know, to all those who are taking to a reasonable view on Kashmir, I'll say just ignore the trolls and go ahead. Just ignore the criticism, because this is doing no good to the future of this country.
I know you've had a view on this as the Minister of External Affairs, but do you believe our talks at this stage should at all involve Pakistan?
No. At this stage, you know, let's divide this and understand this issue in some parts.
Right.
2 parts, 3 parts. The first is the people of the valley of Kashmir have issues with us.
That's right.
There are issues with the state government, there are issues with the central government. Now in that, there is no role for Pakistan. Should pellet guns be used or not is not something which Pakistan will decide for us. We'll have to decide between ourselves. So I am saying we should start the dialogue with the stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir in order to resolve the issues which exist between them and us. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is there is a larger issue of Jammu and Kashmir, which is reflected in the UN resolutions, which is reflected in the Shimla Agreement,
right, yes,
and which has been reflected in various accords and statements after that. Now there, Pakistan is involved, and at some point of time, we'll have to talk to Pakistan. But I am very strongly of the view that Pakistan must abide by the commitments it has made in written documents to India, written documents including Shimla. And if Pakistan, for whatever reason, tries to get out of those written commitments, then the trust deficit between the 2 countries will only increase.
But do you believe our problems are aggravated on account of the fact that Pakistan itself is so volatile and so fragile? Do you believe that aggravates our problems?
No, apart from being fragile and unstable, Pakistan also has an army,
that's right,
which dominates its polity. The politicians are involved in all kinds of things. They are always weak in front of the army.
That's right.
So therefore, it's the army which prevails, and there are histories replete with examples where the politicians in Pakistan might have tried to make peace with India, but the army has scuttled it, you know, including things which have happened, events which have taken place of late. So that is the problem, that as long as the Pakistani army continues to dominate Pakistani polity, it becomes very difficult for Pakistan to abide by the commitments they have made.
But will you concede on one ground, sir, that ever since this government came to power, the present dispensation led by Mr. Modi, we have been blow hot, blow cold with Pakistan, almost making some people say we're confused with what to do with our neighbors? It
has always been there, you know. Every Prime Minister in India has tried to reach out to Pakistan thinking that that will make a difference, without realizing, as I said, that history is replete with examples of broken promises.
That's right.
By Pakistan. So Manmohan Singh said, trust and verify. And I challenged him then itself, and I said it should be verify and then trust. So there are different kinds of approaches which have been adopted, and they all ultimately amount to, as you said, a flip-flop.
I'm going to take a quick question on Kashmir and then move on to the Naxal issue that India is grappling with. The alliance promises, the whole manifesto was also about keeping 370 intact, repealing the AFSPA wherever it's possible. Are we still many years away from any of that to happen?
Well, it depends on how we approach the issue. When we made the promise, we should have realized the importance of the promise that we were making, and we should also have realized the incidents, events, etc., which might jeopardize the implementation of those promises. So that is where a statesmanship comes in, and that is what is called for at this point of time. That okay, the circumstances may not be the best, but we will still strive to create greater homogeneity.
So, whatever the circumstances may be, will you agree with me when I say that the present dispensation in New Delhi seems to be more, I'm not going to use the word obsessed, but more focused on managing news here, on the publicity blitzkriegs like a Digital India, a Swachh Bharat, or a Jandan, than really looking at core issues in Kashmir, where the valley is burning. It is at the worst in the last decade.
Without going into details, let me tell you that Kashmir is the longest lasting problem of India, 70 years. It's a political problem which degenerates into a law and order problem from time to time, and our approach should be to resolve the political issue so that peace can be restored in the valley. This is the difference, and I have already made the point that it is very unfair to the security forces to expect them to resolve a political issue.
And that's perhaps what they're being made to do. But talking about security forces, I think the other big challenge that India is grappling with, and you've spoken on this, is the Naxal attack. First it was Dantewada in 2010, and now we've got Sukma and some of our bravest soldiers being killed there. You've spoken about standard operating procedures that perhaps need to be changed and reviewed. What exactly do you mean?
No, you see, for every incident or contingency, the security forces have a standard operating procedure.
That's right, yes.
Now, I had said that first we should find out whether the standard operating procedure was followed in this Sukna case. If it was followed and even then the incident took place, then it needs to be revised. We'll have to have a new standard operating procedure so that our brave security forces are not killed in this manner. But that was one of the points which I had made. Then I made the point about intelligence. That
do you believe Sukma is as much an intelligence failure?
I have asked for an inquiry into the whole incident. If there is no intelligence input that the Naxals were planning such an attack, they put together 300 That's militants.
Right. Yes.
They had the villagers as their shield,
yes,
and they had climbed up on trees and they were firing from there, according to newspaper reports. If all that was happening,
it
so
was very
many
meticulously
people,
planned.
Yeah. Therefore, if we have intelligence people in that or assets in that area, they should have surely reported. Something of this kind was being planned, especially after what happened in Dantewada.
Would you agree with me that the fact that CRPF did not have a Director General for 50 days is poor reflection on how New Delhi is handling Naxalism? And by New Delhi, I don't mean just this government, successive governments in the past.
Yeah, I mean, a retirement, the retirement of an officer is not a sudden event.
Or a surprise.
Yeah, it is something which is there in the making for years. And therefore, there is an ample time for you to appoint a successor. So I don't know what held up the government's decision in this matter.
You can say that about a lot of appointments in New Delhi, but are you surprised, sir, that the attack and the discourse once again is against JNU, it's against students, it's against the Kanhaiya Kumars, and not so much against the state?
No, I think that's all irrelevant. Unfortunately, we are living in an age of alternative facts, and therefore people are dishing out alternative facts. It's a very simple example of an operation gone haywire, of an operation which failed. And therefore you have to look at the failure, the reasons for the failure, and take corrective steps so that our security forces are not exposed like this in future.
Fair enough, sir. I can't let you go without speaking to you a little bit on economy, and I'm not going to talk to you about macro economy right now, but I'm just going to ask you this question. Everybody is celebrating Sensex at 30,000 or Nifty hitting that new mark every day in trade, but do fundamental economic realities on the ground back this euphoria according to you?
I don't want
There's
to...
a lot of cake cutting and euphoria on the street.
I don't want to do anything to restrain this. But I'll only say that there was a famous Fed chief in the US who referred to it as irrational exuberance.
And you think it's that?
Well, as you yourself mentioned, the fundamentals would not support it.
Which are the fundamentals that you're referring to? Because largely speaking, fiscal deficit is under control, CAD is under control, inflation is is largely under control, is not at an astronomical level. What are you referring to? Are you referring to credit growth? Are you referring to gross capital formation?
Yeah, I am referring
NPAs?
to credit growth, I am referring to fresh investment, I am referring to new schemes, large schemes like the ones we started when we were in government, and I am referring to the bank NPAs, I am referring to a lack of investment leading to lack of creation of employment opportunities and things of that kind. So, as far as the fundamental problems of the economy are concerned, they remain where they were 3 years ago. The NPAs remain, investment, lack of investment remains, lack of employment opportunities remain, and the economy will not really move forward. Will really not have a healthy growth rate until these issues are resolved.
Are you worried that perhaps the resolution, the will to resolve is there, but people are not willing to take decisions? These are discretionary decisions. You may have an oversight panel, but bankers and promoters can't decide on how much haircut to take because this is discretionary and bankers are they may be pulled up later.
As far as the banking sector is concerned, you will recall a number of developments which took place as soon as this government came into power. And they were meeting even the Prime Minister with the bankers, the Finance Minister has been meeting them from time to time. And the bankers themselves have been discussing this. The whole country has been worried about it. There have been discussions in Parliament. But where are the initiatives?
And what would you blame these non-initiatives for?
No, because the cogitation, the discussions in the government are perhaps taking longer than they should be allowed to take.
So you believe the buck stops with, do you believe the Prime Minister or his office then needs to take a more active role into this?
No, I believe the Finance Ministry needs to put its act together. And the Finance Minister needs to get personally involved in resolving the NPA issue. It reflects poorly on the Finance Ministry that no new initiative has been taken to resolve the NPA issue in the last 36 months.
Okay, so NPA is a red mark, but the green mark will perhaps be the GST. And my last question to you there, sir. There is a lot of euphoria around the introduction of the GST. This is perhaps not the perfect one that some of you spearheaded, but yes, we will have a GST soon. Are you as optimistic on the impact that this GST will have? Are we rushing through to meet the deadline?
I'll tell you a story. When we were examining the GST in the Standing Committee on Finance,
that's right.
We had probably the NCAER saying that it will add 2 percentage points
to the GDP.
To GDP growth. And some of the members of the Standing Committee wanted proof of this.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.